You have a solitary individual, usually basically an infantryman, who's going to land on the ground and engage the enemy. Here we're able to move vehicles, jeeps, artillery pieces, whole surgical hospitals, supply, and you can concentrate it in a small spot. Originally this design was created by the Waco Aircraft Company. People call it Wacos, but it's a Waco. Yeah. CG is cargo glider, 4th type. And they would come in. I got this picture, I didn't bring it, but it's they wanted to show that these things are safe. So this in St. Louis, your air base there, they had the mayor of St. Louis, and they had 3 or 4 generals in there, and they were going to be towed by a glider and land successfully. Well, the fittings on the fuselage where the wings go into, the fittings were rather small. They're narrow. And so under the stress of turning, one wing ripped off. They didn't have parachutes. So and there was a lot of photographers there for the newspaper. And this one photograph, it takes my breath away. The glider's like maybe 20 feet from impact. And if you see one, it's coming nose first, and has one wing on it, and the other wing's gone. And it just, to me, it just... Back to the drawing board. Everyone on aircraft was killed instantly on impact, but they found that the problem, R&D people, and they added a glider. It has a plywood floor, and some of your control surfaces, they're worried about weight distribution, but the whole body itself and the wings are made out of canvas, and they're painted, and you work.
The Air Force used to have one.
Yeah, it was an Air Force item, and it opened up. I'll show you how that worked. Once you landed, the nose came up. Well, the glider pilot. In the beginning, they had 2 glider pilots in the front. And later on, like in Normandy, they had a glider pilot and someone who took, OJT at the same time. And so once you landed, and you had to come in, and they had a drag parachute. So once you come in and you land, you full flaps, you slow down, you do everything you can, you pop a little parachute. Here's what happened in Normandy. Is General Donald Pratt, the Brigadier General. He was the Assistant Division Commander of the 101st Airborne Division. He was not a paratrooper. He was going to be going to battle, he was going to be a glider rider. So he's got his Jeep over there. He has one of the best glider pilots in the world, and he had an aide, a driver. So there was 4 guys in that glider. Now, when they took off, the pilot, this thing isn't handling right. What the hell's going on with it? And it's at that point he finds out that the general had boilerplate added to the glider because he's worried about rounds going through it. So he's trying to make it bulletproof. But you can't fly this thing. It's like trying to fly a brick. And so he's fighting this thing and doing the best he can. And there's only him. And there's another guy sitting in front. He's telling this guy what to do. And he says, if something happens to me, this is what you've got to do. And so they came in, and I've been to this location in Normandy. And in the early morning, I had to do, the grass was wet. That didn't help anything either. There's no brakes on this thing. You just can't push on the brakes. So this glider comes in. You come in for your final approach. It's got to be good the first time. You can't do a flyby and try it again. You're committed to that final approach, and that's it, boys and girls. So he's coming in, and he's sliding, and he just can't stop. And he's at a high rate of speed. Well, in Normandy, he got a lot of hedgerows, and he hit a hedgerow and broke the general's neck. And so he killed, if you think about it, he basically killed himself. And the pilot broke both of his legs, and the assistant was killed. And some guy left, the other guy who was riding private, he survived, but he went to get somebody to get some medical attention. While he's doing that, this glider just slammed into a hedgerow. It's just not moving. No one can move anything. You have 2 dead people in there. So all of a sudden these Germans are coming through, and they saw this glider crack and they're checking it out. So the glider pilot pretended to be dead. The Germans came through, looked around and left. And, he became the first division, or first general officer to get killed in the Normandy campaign. So, killed on contact. But these gliders were were disposable, expendable. They come through. They're designed. They come through and rip wings off, and no problem. They're designed to come apart as they land. Hopefully landing. And but they can carry 18 troops inside them. Sir, any question?
The frame, was it wood or metal?
The framework was metal pipe. Yes, like steel pipe.
Okay.
That was your strength. I talked with a glider rider a number of years ago, and he said he turned around, bumped it, and he put a hole in it, so he had to hold it together to go on the flight. To stay away from it. The wood was like plywood. There's a glider. If you're ever in Kalamazoo, the Kalamazoo Air Zoo. I worked on this program there. I was part of the dedication process, and they have a CG-4A glider. At that point, this was back in the 90s, they had glider pilots assembling one. So the different pieces and everything. It's not flyable, but I don't know of any glider that's flyable now. So they had these things hundreds of. Ford Motor Car Company made these things in Airborne. CG-4As, he made about 400 of them. But Wacko, by far, that's the original one.
How did these things get aloft?
They were towed.
Like, what was that?
No, an airplane, C-47.
Oh, right off of.
Yeah, right over here
Like a
is where the tow rope was connected.
Okay.
And they had a commo wire. It was S-spool that secured on the tow rope, because there's a lot of stretch in the rope. So as it would stretch, it wouldn't break the communication. So they literally had a crank telephone talking to the pilot of the aircraft. That sort of thing. Voice-activated field telephone. And so they came over it, and you look at it, and normally you would hit the LZ when you would release. You would bank, and you'd come around and burn up altitude as you came into your final approach. Tell me that final
Who
approach.
controlled the release?
What's that?
Who controlled the release? The glider pilot?
The glider pilot did. You had it right up in front, the hand was pulled down. And then usually the aircraft would go, transport aircraft would go right, would go left, things of that nature. And then what they did with that tow rope that's hanging behind the C-47, they would drop it. They had an extended area somewhere, and they would drop it, so they didn't fall, and farmers loved them.
Is the reason for doing this just cost?
I'm sorry, please?
Is the reason for using gliders just cost?
No, it's just, well, glider riders, the infantry that were inside these things were not specially trained. I knew a guy who just was in the Michigan National Guard, and he got tired of doing nothing, so he volunteered, and oh, by the way, you're in a 325th glider infantry. That, you'll find out.
And you're putting people on, concentrating people on the ground where there's no place to land.
It's just-
The whole idea is to get a large number of people in a small area,
Nobody, for example.
and heavy equipment too. Sir?
In fact, there was a controversy that the gliderman didn't get jump pay.
Yes, until after Normandy.
Yeah.
In August 1944, they didn't have jump wings. They didn't have any wings at all. They couldn't jump louser. They didn't have jump boots, and they didn't get jump pay. And there's a song about that too. So yeah, and the glider guys and the paratroopers didn't get along either. So all of a sudden they came up with a glider patch. So you had a glider and a parachute overlaid. So before you had a glider and you had a parachute, there's a paratrooper who used to wear this. Yeah, I mean they never got along, but he turned the patch so the glider's crashing. And he turned it 90 degrees, so it didn't put the glider going down. But Those guys, you had to give it to them, man. That was, a lot of guys. There's a friend of mine, George Koskamaki, was in the Signals, 101st Airborne Division, and he was gonna be a glider rider. He goes, no, I'm not. He volunteered for Airborne School. Jumped into Normandy, jumped into Holland, and made a tailgate jump into Bastogne.
He was General Taylor's radio man.
Yes, he was. Yep, Taylor, yeah. George and I've known him since the 1980s. When he passed away, I was one of his pallbearers.
He gave me a piece of his parachute.
Yeah, great guy. So that's a CG-4A. Since I got this picture here, I want to show you something, the black and white stripes on there. This is a means of identifying all tactical aircraft in Normandy. Because we had a problem in the first airborne assault, massive airborne assault, mass attack, was in Sicily in July 10th, 1943. The first mission in July 9th, 3 battalions, the regiment has 3 battalions in it, and then they had another 504. So you dropped 4 battalions of infantry and a battalion of artillery in Sicily. You'll at least land it in Sicily, that's it. Making the drops on was kind of difficult. The follow-on forces the next night flew over the course they were supposed to, and previously the United States Navy was bombed by German twin-engine bombers. So they're getting a little nervous. So the C-47s come over, and the United States Navy opens up on them. And 27 transports were shot out of the sky by the United States Navy. That's the largest incident of fratricide in the United States military. The assistant division commander of the 82nd Airborne at that point he's MIA. He's never found him. His plane went down. A friend of mine was in 504, 2nd Battalion 504, and he was the jump master, which was an officer. And he was doing his door checks, making sure they were, looking for the drop zone. You can't rely on the pilot sometimes. So. And he saw them just coming across the coastline. They were on the coast, and then it sounds like stones landing on a tin roof, and there was rounds going through the aircraft. And all of a sudden, everything's going crazy, and it looks like Star Wars, where you say you see tracers go through the aircraft and someone getting hit. And he's like, what the hell's going on here? And the plane shuddered. The engine started doing weird things, burning. And he had everyone everyone was standing up, hooked up, ready to roll before they went over the coastline. So he went back to say something, and someone pushed him out of the aircraft. He's the only one to get out of the aircraft. The aircraft exploded. So he's the only one to exit. He had no idea who the guy was that saved his life. I talked with him, I knew him in the 80s, 83, and every time I saw Bob Sellers, Captain Sellers, we talked about it. He would tell me about that. I have no idea who that guy is to save his life. But yeah, the United States Navy just took out 27 transports with guys on board. So they want to make sure there's no mistaking this is German aircraft don't have black and white stripes on them. All fighter planes, medium bombers. The only thing I did not have, these were like heavy bombers, because they're more strategic, so they'll be higher altitude. They're not going to be down lower level. And they made sure the guy who planned Operation Overlord, the airborne phase for Overlord, was General James Gavin. And he said, I don't want the Navy anywhere near these guys. So they flew around the Continental Peninsula where Cherbourg is, and they came in from the opposite side, the west side. Flew over, then the invasion fleet's here, and they just went this way. Went back to England. Stay away from these guys. So they planned the approach and egress routes to be away from the Navy one. Nothing, can't trust them. Don't let that happen. So, and it didn't. But that's where that came from. How many knew that?
1/3.
Okay. So if you're on Jeopardy now, and they ask that there's, now I was, in August of 1940, we only had 40 paratroopers. we developed a program, a doctrine, that rapidly trained volunteers to jump out of aircraft, paratroopers. And they created these battalions, the 501st, 502nd, 503rd, and 504th battalions. They took those battalions and used that cadre and expanded into regiments. Each regiment has 3 battalions in it. So they took it and expanded all of this. A good friend of mine who lived in at Detroit, John Garvin, he was in the artillery platoon, test battery. How do you get artillery on the battlefield? Because when you're down there, an infantryman is basically a lightly armed soldier, and you can come up against tanks. You need artillery support, a lot of it. So they had a howitzer called a pack howitzer designed for mountain troops. It came apart easy. It was small, 75 millimeter. So they took it apart and bundled all these sections underneath the aircraft, and they would drop them, and you have to find the pieces and put it all back together again. In Normandy, they had a problem. One battalion, they dropped a battery, 6 guns. They had enough pieces to make 1 gun. So after that, I have a copy of the original AAR, after action review. They had all the battalion commanders in the 82nd. They all sat down. What went right, what went wrong, what are we going to do about it? So they daisy-chained everything together. All those bundles were all linked together, and they had the lights. So you drop it, and all the bundles are going to stay together. You find one, you found them all. And the guy would jump with the breech block. That part of his load, and he jumped, and he exited the aircraft. And so finding them. So it took a while. Normandy, they learned a lot in Sicily, and they used pathfinders, specially trained troops, to mark the drop zone. They used an electronics transmitter receiver called Rebecca Eureka. The first time they used that was not Normandy, even though we hear a lot about it in Normandy. It was used in Sicily, and that's Sicily, but Salerno, in September 1943. And a guy I knew in Pennsylvania, he was one of the first to jump in. That was probably the best drop zone. Of course, it was not behind enemy lines, but they had the system, and it worked perfectly. Guided the aircraft in, and everyone dropped on the money. For 2 days, they had the system. It worked great. So in essence, they're going to use the same system for Normandy, and a little different type of scenario, and everything just doesn't exactly go to plan. But you're trained to be flexible. You know what you have to do, what you have to accomplish, and once you land, you have to figure out how you're going to make it work. And I was an NCO, so your NCO is the middle management, and make things work. So you're always working with it. So the thing I learned about being in the Army is that there's always an answer. It may not be obvious, but there's an answer to every problem. So find it and make it work. And it's that the whole team thing. But we started building, sir.
These guys didn't jump into Japan on 30 August, did they?
I'm sorry?
The first U.S. occupation troops didn't jump.
Not into Japan.
No, it says they were the first occupation troops on 30,
Yes.
but they didn't jump in.
No, they landed the aircraft in. Yeah, the whole idea was to get airborne troops in there fast to secure the whole area. And so this is exactly what they did. You had the 1st Airborne Division was the 82nd. It was an infantry division. Elvin York, saw the movie, Gary Cooper. That was the 82nd Division. And they took that division and they tore it apart. The infantry regiments, the 325, I'm probably giving you too much information. You're going to be tested on this. They became the glider units. And the organic units, they took parachute troops and added them into it. So once again, that was in 1942. So once again, we're making it up as we go along. The 82nd was the 1st, the 101st was the 2nd Division, then you had the 17th, the 11th, and the 13th Airborne Divisions. We had 5 divisions of parachute glider troops for operations. And a lot of it was learning it the hard way by the 82nd. Sir?
It seemed like during World War II, the experience of the Germans, the British, the Americans, there were some, tactical successes, but strategically, is it really significant? Given the amount of time and effort and went into developing these specialized troops, it seemed like there were a lot more failures and disasters than there were stunning victories.
OJT, you had these special troops, like look what happened in the Battle of the Bulge, let's say. The Germans had broke through on December 16, 1944, and there were no reserves to put in there. The only two reserves were these guys waiting to jump. So they, a lot of the commanders, like the 101st, Mac Taylor wasn't there, the assistant division commander wasn't there. It was Anthony McCullough, who was in the third chain. He was the commander of the artillery, and he's the only one there. Matt Ridgway, who commands all the airborne, isn't there either. So Gavin takes the role of being the corps commander and division commander. So there's an emergency, respond to it. And because of their ability to respond to situations rapidly, they become the first to go in there. Originally it was the 82nd supposed to go to Bastogne, but the situation is very fluid. War is very chaotic, so you don't know what's going on. So the 82nd kept on going to a place north of that called Verblemont, and then they was branched out movement to contact. The 82nd was the first to advance and engage the enemy in the Battle of the Bulge. The 101st, when you look at the Bulge, the terrain is very mountainous, there's a lot of trees, it's winter, so everyone is restricted to the roads, particularly with the Germans attacking with all the armored forces it has to stay on the road, you can't go across country. So what's very important is the road intersections, St. Vith up in the north and Bastogne. So the 101st is sent to Bastogne, they realized that. That was actually 8th Corps headquarters there in the Caserne. So the 101st deployed around there, and the Germans eventually deployed 5 divisions to try to capture Bastogne when they wanted that intersection. So what you have here is you have troops that are more reliable. I'm making generalizations here. They're very reliable, they're tough, they're aggressive, they're cocky, all those attributes. And they will. Yeah, I've heard that too. They engaged, they secured an area, and they resisted. And Bastogne is known for a German commander gave him the ultimatum: you surrender or we'll annihilate you. And of course you're not going to surrender. So they, McCullough made this comment, wild comment called nuts, basically, I think. It was a sarcastic comment. And that was what they put on the reply to the German commander. To the German commander, nuts, American commander. And that, because Germans didn't understand our slang. They're saying, hazelnuts or walnuts, what's got to do with it, so it was just pretty chaotic. And so it shows a lot of audacity, and that's a tradition. What's your name? Andrew. Andrew, come on up here for a second. We're getting close on time here, so I want to. Andrew's going to be my willing paratrooper, right? Yeah. I like that spirit.
That's the volunteer.
Yeah, learn your last one. This is a. Come here for a second. Turn around. Put your hands behind your back. Not that one. Right in there. And right over there. Something like that. This isn't even a real one. So, this is the parachute. You have your main here. This is a T10 canopy. This is current what we have. One of the things while I'm putting this thing together for Andrew here, in Normandy, the parachutes the harnesses were made out of cotton webbing. So when they got wet, they tightened up, they shrank, you couldn't get out of it. So you had a jump knife, you cut your way out. And on the jumpsuits, you had a little pocket here with a switchblade in it, you can cut your way out of it too. Okay, and got the leg straps in. This isn't fitted for Andrew, but that's okay, right? Did you jump? All right. And, I knew a couple of guys that were medics. Okay, normally you can pull these things up and stash them and everything else, but we're gonna, thank you. Boss. This is an insurance policy. Yeah, it's a reserve parachute. So we take the belly band from here, you route it to the rear of the back of the parachute. There's a couple of straps back here. Pull it through, and on these D-rings here, you can click it. One, two. Hands on your head. It's nice and snug. And you do what's called a quick release on here so that you can get out of it quickly. You need to get out of it, you need to get out of it real quick. So you double it back in here. Should be 3 fingers, but you've got plenty of room here. I need a brain bucket here, I got this. This is a helmet I jumped with, I jumped in college. That's okay, can't talk. Yeah. Secure it. Jump helmets have a chin strap on here. So if you just have the regular conventional thing, you're going to leave your helmet. I'll keep it on. Okay, I'm going to show you before that. This is an original T7 parachute. This is dated 1940, early 45. And this is how it deploys. You have that static line I talked about, and then you have this whole panel here. This panel would rip out, and on the other side of the panel, you have the apex of your canopy in there. It's a 28-foot canopy. Now they have 34-foot canopy. So it pulls out the canopy first, that gets the air, and it opens up and it shoots you out like a cannon and suspension lines, and you come back, and that's the opening shot. So this is type of parachute, and this has that quick release box. The QRB is British design, and which you saw in the picture there. You turn a quarter turn. There's a yellow safety pin in there, so it will not deploy unless you intentionally remove it. And you quarter turn, hit it, and everything comes apart. They came up with another system called ejector snaps on this parachute. And because of the situation I mentioned, where you had the canopy, that's a cotton harness there, which would shrink, and you have to get out of it. And you had a hook that would fit on there, and you had to pull it out. And if it's wet, it's not going to happen. You have to cut your way out of your harness. So this is a different setup here. You have a canopy release assembly here. If you're being dragged, a Nantucket sleigh ride, you call that. If you're sliding around the ground, pull this down. This cable comes up. You hammer it down, and it separates. It deflates the canopy. This is a new addition. This happened in the 1960s. They came up with this idea. After a bunch of paratroopers were killed by being dragged around, they had no way to replace the canopy. So, and these are ejector snaps. You pull this and it ejects it just pulls it right out and separates it. And our airborne warrior over here has a static line on conventional parachutes is yellow, so you can see what's in front of you. You don't want to see anything yellow in front of you. It gets tangled up and in front of you, misrouted. static lines, it's not pretty. But you have your snap hook, it's very similar to the World War II one. And there's a little hole here, and we used to have to put a safety wire in there. It did absolutely nothing, but it was a mental thing that, yes, if you can do this, it's locked. So that's all it is, just a little thing. Reassurance, little safety step. So that would go over on this side of it here, keep that in front, hold that on your reserve. So, here we are. Right You didn't do anything, what are you clapping? When you jump, you bend forward at the waist, 90 degrees, bend forward. Hands, elbows inside your chest, like that. And your hands extended and your fingers extended around the end of the reserve. Okay. See this thing here? It's called a ripcord grip. That's very important. I always put my thumb on top of it so I can slide my finger into it and pull. It's easier to do this than try to do this. So, I was thinking. So you move forward, keep your feet and knees together. Exit the aircraft. As our hero over here, exit the aircraft. This is inside the anchor cable inside the aircraft. Okay, assume that body position. And forward at the waist. So this would separate the aircraft. At this point, we begin to deploy the parachute. And what we have over here is 4 flaps that come together, and you have 80-pound test cotton webbing over here. And inside, this is hooked up to your D-bag, your deployment bag. Inside here is your S-folded parachute. This would rip open, pull out, would flip out this way, and your risers, which are not connected on this dummy parachute. This would pull out, so, okay, I want you to say 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. Bend over. Okay, and that 4 seconds, once he left the aircraft, he would have canopy over his head. That's how quick it is. This would, the aircraft's going about 120 miles an hour, and that's 80-pound test cotton webbing, so that snaps, separate, and you're still part of the aircraft. You're still secured to the aircraft until the parachute fully deploys, and then there's more cotton webbing, and it breaks off. Now you're free. That's your umbilical cord right here, and now you're free of the parachute of the aircraft. And then now you've got next point of contact is a performance is a check canopy. So look straight up. You guys see a canopy up here? Okay. Right away. Grab that reserve. Don't pull it. But you put your thumb in there and just to shoot your arm out like that. That's very good. So once that happens, that's manually operated. You have, this is your pilot chute for a reserve. This is a World War II pilot chute. See how it was popped open? There's a spring in here. This would catch the air, this goes out. When you pull the ripcord grip, you're supposed to turn your head either left or right because you want to keep your nose there. It'll come right out like that really fast. Instantly.